Do you ever feel like your paycheck disappears faster than a classroom full of kids as soon as the bell rings? You know what I mean. Somehow you get paid on Friday and by Monday it's like, where did it go? Gas, groceries, random school runs? It's gone. But I started using this app called Upside. And I'm not even kidding, guys. I've actually been getting money back on stuff I was already buying. Just from getting gas and a few everyday stops, I've built up a little stash and now I'm low-key saving it for a vacation. Cha-ching! And the best part? It's easy. You just open the app, claim an offer, and get cash back. There's no extra work. So if your money has been doing the disappearing act lately, especially every time you fill up at the pump, go ahead and download the Upside app and start getting some of your hard-earned money back every time you use it. All you have to do is download the Upside app and sign up using the invitation code Melinda35278, and you're on your way to earning cash back. I'll have the link in the show notes for you, plus the invitation code. Happy earning! Hi, friend. Are you ready to move into a leadership position? Do you have interests and ambitions that you want to pursue, but feel like you don't know how to take that next step? Maybe you want to start your own coaching or consulting agency. I'm Mel, and I help educators define their career path through correct mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for your career transition. I will show you how to level up your leadership skills, share your expertise in a new way, create impact on a larger scale, and put your leadership in motion. As an educator for over 20 years, I started to feel underused and like I had more to give. I knew when the time had come for me to leave the classroom and affect change on a larger level. Now, I'm ready to help you determine where your talents and skills mesh with your passions and interests. Put your leadership in motion and move into that next phase of your educational career journey. Let me help you define your career path by having the right mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for that next leadership position. So power up and put your leadership in motion. Welcome back to the Empowered Educator Show. I'm your host, Dr. Mel Vandevort. Today I have with me a guest. I have Chad Ostrowski. He is the CEO and the founder of the Teach Better team, and he's been working with schools and districts providing training and development to increase teacher performance. He's focused on mastery and student-centered practices to improve student learning using proprietary frameworks, including the GRID Method Mastery Learning Framework, and he helps people thrive using that. So welcome to the show, Chad.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you. I love having a guest on the show, just a little bit of a different perspective, and it gives me an opportunity not to have to carry the whole load of the conversation. So thank you for joining me.
Absolutely.
So Chad, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're located in Canton, Ohio, and just tell us all about Chad and your
Yeah,
journey in education and how you got to where you are with Teach Better.
absolutely. So I started my teaching career in a high needs inner city school district. So challenges, trauma, everything you can possibly imagine. And I was really looking for ways to overcome some of those challenges with my learners. So as I was teaching in middle level science at the time, I came up with a mastery learning framework called the GRID method that let my students work at their own pace using standards aligned instruction, standards based practices, and mastery based learning. And once I put this in place, my students started to thrive. I started to have less issues, and people started to essentially ask me, how are you getting these results, from your classroom? And, that was over a decade ago now. But since then, I've started to show schools how to implement mastery learning. And then through my work and after founding Teach Better, We now work with schools on everything from standards-based grading, standards-aligned instruction, strategic planning, behavior management, and still do a ton of work around mastery and personalized learning. So not only was it born in the classroom, but I now get to increase my impact over the last decade and now beyond in schools and districts across the country. So love the work that I do, and I'm glad to be sharing it with you and your audience.
Yeah, we're definitely excited. I'm all about standards alignment and the instruction. And I've found even me being in the classroom, I've been out for a long time now. Gosh, I guess 10 years now. Wow. Time goes fast.
Does.
Woo. But I realize that the more I learn now as a leader, in whatever capacity I'm serving in at the time, that, man, I didn't know as much as I thought I did when I was in the classroom, and there are so many things that I wish I had known because, I mean, I was a pretty effective teacher, but I would have been
Right.
much better had someone told me about these things, especially how to align everything with the standards, and, I knew on my own somewhat, but how to really unpack standards and make sure everything's aligned to your assessments and all of that. No one ever told me how to do that, and I sure wish they had.
Yeah, a lot of times it's just about providing those tools and kind of uncovering like that process. A lot of times lesson planning feels like a chore because like no one ever looks at it and I have to do this thing before my instruction as an educator or a teacher in the classroom. So I think lesson planning in general has gotten kind of a bad rap. When I think about
Yeah.
instruction, I go like, are we planning purposely for learning versus filling time? So,
Mhm.
do I have a clear outcome? Do I have a clear way to get to that outcome? Do I have a clear way to measure if I've gotten to that outcome? And is it aligned to the depth and rigor that it needs to be? And those are basic questions with or without a piece of paper or a lesson plan that, like, every classroom teacher should be able to kind of identify on a day to day basis.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you said, just being able to align all of that with that outcome, and we don't always think outcome when we're planning our lessons as
Right.
a teacher sometimes, because it's, "Okay, here's what I wanna do, now what can I make fit?" And that's what I
Yeah.
did. I did that so much when I was in the classroom. I would pick a lesson that I thought was awesome, and then I'm like, "Okay, well, which standard fits in here? Which standards fit in here?" And then
Yeah.
guess what happened at the end of the year when, come testing time, I had a bunch of standards that I had not taught or had not taught well.
Right.
And then my kids are like kind of hanging out here somewhere trying to figure it out when they're doing the state assessment is what would
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, ambiguity is not your friend as an educator. And there's a lot to be said for like there needs to be space for creativity and
Mhm.
innovation to happen. And it's not necessarily argument that I would make is like we can't have any play or flexibility.
Right.
But there needs to be like non-negotiables of do we have clarity and alignment to the standards in our work? Are we planning to fill days or produce learning and mastery? And those
Mhm.
are some like fundamental shifts that we often find we're taking with teachers as we work with them, going from that frontwards design, this is what I have to cover, these are the
Mhm.
things that'll fit, to that backwards design going, this is the clear objective I have, right? How do I backwards
Yep.
design using things like depth of knowledge, the standards, clear assessments, or mastery progressions is a lot of the time to meet this goal. Now the goal of the instructor is to facilitate learning through that progression, not to get that activity or task done on that given day. And to
Right.
me, that is like the student centered, learning centered approach
Mhm.
versus the teacher centered, like execution approach for like teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're thinking as the building leader, how do you make sure that this is happening in your building?
Right.
When I became a principal, I took the knowledge I had from being a teacher and the things I'd learned in college somewhat. College doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily prepare you for your career all the time. They just like to take your money. And I'm pretty sure I've built somebody a house or bought several
A lot of
cars for.
expensive pieces
Oh,
of
yeah,
paper.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. But then when you get into it and you're actually doing the work, you're like, "Man, I don't have all the knowledge or the the skill
Right.
set that I need. So as a new principal or a new building leader, maybe even a curriculum instructor
Yeah.
or an instructional coach, how do you make sure that teachers have this knowledge and are effectively using it?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question and a great reflection for any leader that's hiring someone for PD, bringing a vendor in for training, looking for those partnerships. So when people bring us in to work on any instructional outcome they want to see, whether it's standards-based grading, mastery learning, like whatever the thing is, the first question I always ask them is, what are the 3 to 5 things you wanna see in every classroom every day here at this school? If you can identify those non-negotiables, it will create clarity in every other aspect of the work. If those are not there, it becomes external work happening internally versus internal work you're getting help with and support from the outside for. And I think that's one of the biggest places work, training, PD, and like strategic plans tend to fall apart is when you're just bringing the plan in from an outside person or
Mhm.
vendor, but there's no internal anchoring for that plan, it
Mhm.
tends to fall apart because after the trainer leaves or after the PD day's over, all the work falls down. All the work falls apart. Whereas if you start with the idea of, we're going to start working on mastery learning because we need to see progress monitoring, clear assessment, and standards aligned instruction in our classrooms every day, that is a very different conversation than, we're going to work on mastery learning, do what you want with it. Like those are 2 very
Mhm.
different
Mhm.
equations, and I think leadership starts with clarity and alignment, right?
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
you start there, any work you do is gonna be massively beneficial to your staff. Most teachers in PD sessions come to me and they go, "What am I gonna have to do with this?" They just want that clarity,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Now they'll take the tools and they'll do whatever we ask them, but if they don't know what's expected and they're supposed to do,
Mhm.
that ambiguity creates stress and it creates overwhelm and it creates more mental stress on their plate because they don't know what's expected of them. So, the number one thing I tell principals and curriculum directors before a training is, make sure your staff knows what you want them to do after today.
Right.
Make sure that's clear because the training and their acceptance of this work and these strategies will always be better if they know what's on the other side.
Exactly, and that ambiguity also creates gaps because you
Yeah,
have different mental models.
right.
So, my mental model as a 6th grade teacher might have been different than my co-6th grade teacher's mental model,
Yeah.
and so we have our own perspectives, we have our own experiences, our skills that we bring to the table, and if we have that ambiguity that's kind of just built in there without being built in there kind of thing,
Right.
then that's when you get those gaps because you're doing your thing, I'm doing mine. There is no cohesive learning at that point.
Yeah.
So, when you're thinking about those 3 to 5 non-negotiables that you want to see every day as a building leader, how do you determine what those are? How do you know what 3 to 5 you should look for when you're
R
going in to
right.
classroom?
So the first starts with a very simple conversation that it's about practices, not products.
Mhm.
So I never want a principal to go, "I need every teacher using fill in vendor name software product here." I wanna
Mhm.
know what instructional practices that are core to your existence as an institution do you wanna see? Is it personalized learning? Is it small group work? Is it hands-on learning? Is it problem-based learning? And why do you wanna see these things? If you wanna bring in mastery learning, what are the parts of mastery learning that you wanna see in your classrooms every single day? So that
Mhm.
you can create, what are these 3 to 5 pillars of teaching, learning, and instruction that I can walk through my halls, open any door, and almost guarantee I'm gonna see these things happening. Because when
Mhm.
you break it down for your teachers in that much clarity, they will meet that bar almost every single time. And,
Mhm.
you know this as a leader, right? When that clarity is there, most teachers go, "That's my goal. I can meet that. as long as I have the time, space, support, training, and tools to do that, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
There's other things we can talk about with the training side of that, but like if you provide the right support and have that clarity, most of your teachers are going to be able to meet that goal. It's only when it's not clear or they don't know what it looks like or feels like to you as the leader that it creates all that extra stress that makes things fall apart.
Right, and when you're getting to those things, though, you're using data to inform those 3 to 5 things that you're gonna be needing to look
Yeah,
for when you're going into classrooms. So you have your beginning of the year data. You have and I all data has a place, but all data is used for different reasons.
sure.
And so your beginning of the year normed or standardized test, that data is going to be used in a different way than, say, we use IXL here at our school, than the IXL data that we get on a daily or weekly basis. So you
Yeah,
have to really think about your context, your teachers, your
right.
students, and all of that, using that data to determine what those 3 to 5 things are that you're going to be looking for.
Yeah, and I would even say anecdotal and observational data
Oh,
also fit
absolutely.
that too, right? So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
definitely like data driven like numbers, but I often like lead this with a tiered conversation. So the first thing I will generally ask is what are 3 to 5 things that you see that you want to see more of in your classrooms that
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
working in your
Mhm.
school right now?
Right.
Because we have to start with a place of positivity and growth and build on things that are already working. The second things are what are 3 to 5 things, and this is usually in like a room with like the leaders and everyone involved. And what are the 3 to 5 things that you wanna see never again, that you don't ever wanna
Right.
see, that you're like, "I hate this. I don't like that it's happening here. We have way too many office referrals or teacher-centered like, whatever the thing is, like, what do we not wanna see anymore? And then what is the data telling us?" And I think if you have those 3 viewpoints in that
Mhm.
list of things, you
Mhm.
can start building out, what do we need to spread? What do we need to stop or improve? And what is the data telling us where our gaps are that may be able to be fixed instructionally, right? Subgroups, or maybe it's performance in certain areas or subjects or things like that. But
Mhm.
to me, like those 3 data points help guide the conversation. And I've literally filled with a leadership team an entire whiteboard of like all of these
Yes.
things.
Mhm.
And then it's about going, okay, what do these things actually mean in practice? What are some key instructional practices, trainings, or supports that we can provide your team that are going to solve these things? And then how are we going to hold them accountable for solving those things because we have this clarity now?
I do agree with you on that. One of the things that I was excellent at as a classroom teacher is knowing my kids and having
Yeah.
just that anecdotal information. And, within a 2-week period after starting school, I knew where all of my kids were and I knew what they needed. And so I was able to really think through what my small groups were or what different
Hmm.
groups. I had so much going on in my classroom. So I would have independent students who really they didn't need a lot of instruction from me, which gave me that time during certain subjects, of course. But that gave me that time to really work with those
Hmm.
students who needed more of my attention at that time. So I had like 3 different groups going at any time for
Love it.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the crux of, a lot of the mastery learning work we do. The framework we have called the grid method shows teachers how to unpack standards, create tiered progressions for learning, and then manage students through those progressions. And it's not a software, it's just purely instructional based so that it works with whatever system or curriculum you have in place. And oftentimes, like you just described, most teachers are doing some of it or most of it already. It's about
Mhm.
putting all those pieces in
Yep.
place. So for
Yep.
example, maybe you're running stations or centers to meet the diverse needs of your students, but are those stations or centers a progression? Do they increase in complexity? Are there mastery checks? Are they standards aligned? So like what are those layers of conversations you can have around? On the other side, you could have a school that goes, "Hey, we are really interested in standards based grading and we want to take that on this next year or something like that. Well, like then my first question tends to be, are you standards aligned instruction already? Because if you're not, creating a new measuring stick for something that's not happening in the classroom is not going to help your situation. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, teachers knowing where their students are, absolutely critical. But also from like the leadership building perspective, knowing what those goals are and where your staff is currently at so you can get them to the where you want to go
Mm-hmm.
is also critical to the process.
Absolutely. So tell us just a little bit, I know this is the method that you go out and you teach schools and stuff,
Sure.
but give us a little bit of an overview of, like your elevator pitch for your grid
Yeah.
method.
Absolutely. So the grid method is a self-paced mastery framework where teachers create standards aligned learning progressions that are tiered based on depth of knowledge, where students can work up to in a scaffolded way to the rigor of the standard and then beyond if they're able to. So we show teachers how to develop these progressions from their standards and their curriculum and then manage and monitor students as they work through them. So we show them how to do all of the aspects of their normal classroom, but make it more student centered and personalized so that all students are able to have an on ramp to learning, as we call it. Because oftentimes, what tends to happen is, we teach something on Monday and 3% of your students are lost. We teach something
Mhm.
on Tuesday and now it's 15% of your students are lost because they were lost on Monday and didn't catch this. Now we're on Friday and we give a quiz and I realize 50% of my class is completely lost, but I don't know when they got lost. And now I have to figure it out.
Right.
So by allowing students to use PACE as a tier one intervention versus waiting till tier two in terms of like RTI and MTSS, like we're baking self-paced learning into the original equation of the lesson design and
Mhm.
the unit design so that we're managing and monitoring student learning to mastery throughout the process. And that gives you more real-time data. It allows you to progress monitor your students. And teachers and schools and districts have had amazing results just from swapping out this whole like the teacher direct model versus like a collaborative, personalized, student centered approach to learning that the grid method helps them achieve.
So in my mind, when you're saying all of this, my mind is going to a lot of independent work. Is
It
that
can
what I'm
be.
hearing?
So one of my favorite sayings that I usually always say during my training is self-paced isn't self-taught. and the and mastery, the most important person in the mastery based classroom is the teacher because
Mhm.
you should be doing more teaching than ever, not less. And
Mhm.
oftentimes, I think there is a misnomer that mastery learning or personalized learning means here's what you have to do. Let me know if you have any questions. And that
Mhm.
is always a huge red flag for me. What it should look like is maybe you do whole group instruction and you have an exit slip, and then kids that are ready move on to the next task. Others come to small group for
Mhm.
intervention or
Mhm.
small group or
Mhm.
remediation.
Mhm.
Or you're doing a more centers and stations type model where you have a whole group instructional setting, because that's the other thing that teachers think they can't do in a student centered classroom is like when do I quote unquote teach is like a really common like
Mhm.
question. And I go
Mhm.
every day, all the time.
Right.
You should always be interacting with your students, but even the whole group should be happening every single day in some capacity. After 10 to 15 minutes, that retention is going to go down. So if you do mini lessons and then let them continue working through progressions at stations or individually, now you're pulling small groups based on needs, supporting and monitoring more individually or small group based. And that's really where we see a lot of teachers thrive once they get all those systems in
Mhm.
place to
Mhm.
set up in their classroom. Because now, if you look at the research on teacher efficacy, it's that facilitator role that we're really putting the teacher into, as opposed to like the traditional, sage on the stage type model, right?
Mhm.
Where
Mhm.
now we're facilitating and motivating students through learning versus I hope you get it when it comes out of my mouth or off the board or whatever this experience is. So it does increase ownership, it increases accountability in all of those aspects as well, which also helps combat some of the more recent larger issues of, student apathy and lack of motivation
Mhm.
because the value proposition of learning has drastically changed in the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, you said so much stuff, and my mind was just going everywhere at that moment. First of all, you're speaking my language with the learning systems, definitely, because when we always think systems, I was very systematic in my classroom, and I mean, my kids ran my classroom. I did classroom economy,
Love it.
so, like, I didn't do a lot of that kind of stuff, you know? I didn't hand out computers. I had a kid to do that. They were 6th grade. They loved it.
Love it.
They
Yeah.
took ownership, you know, that kind of stuff. I didn't shut doors, water plants, any of that. They did all of that. But creating those systems of learning, and my students, when we would go into ELA, like we did our whole group, if I was doing the actual language part of it, then we did a lot of whole group that way. But when we went into the reading, that's where I really had those 3 learning groups, and my kids knew what they needed to do. And I was there. I was everywhere checking in, doing those small groups, pulling those kids that needed a little bit more of my attention. And it was a pretty well ran machine because I created those
Right.
classroom systems. And sometimes as a building leader, it's hard to, especially when you have very seasoned teachers who have
Yeah.
systems they've created that may not be the system you really want them to have now. It's really hard to go in as a new leader and change the classroom teacher's mental model with all of that.
Yeah, and that's always a struggle for every school or building or district I've ever worked with. You have these people that these amazing educators that have their knowledge and mastery of the craft and are doing well and they're like, why should I change? Right? Like, why
Mhm.
should I adjust? And we cannot have teachers adjust practice because we said so.
You're
Like,
right.
that can't be the reason, and that I'm gonna go back to our original conversation of, if we know what those 3 to 5 things are that we wanna see in every
Mhm.
classroom, it lets every administrator say a very important thing that I coach every single administrator I work with on. I go, "I need you to be able to know what those 5 things are and tell every staff member, if you can do these 5 things without the grid method or the thing that I want you to do, I don't care if you use the grid method." Because all of these things are happening. And
Mhm.
I think that's where the mix between high professional expectation and clarity and professional autonomy is the happiest. If I have
Mhm.
clear expectations and I go, listen, if you're already doing your own thing and it's meeting these 5
Mhm.
clear
Mhm.
instructional outcomes,
Right.
I don't need you to do it with the grid method or the mastery framework or the vendor thing that came in and showed you how to do it, because it's already happening and you have the data to back that up.
Mhm.
But that's not gonna be 100% of staff. That's gonna
Right.
be like
Oh, right.
5% of staff,
Yep.
right? That
Exactly.
have all of it put together.
Yep.
What that allows you to do as a leader is go, hey, if you're already doing these 5 things, and take what you can from this training and this support and add it or modify or adjust, but like
Mhm.
keep doing you. But if you don't know what these things look like, this is a tool you are being provided. And that to me helps facilitate the leadership to teacher conversation that lets you go, I'm not noticing these 2 requirements or these 2 things instructionally in your classroom. Have you tried the thing we showed you? Because if
Mhm.
not, I'd like you to if you can't figure it out on your own, which is
Right.
perfectly fine. Now there's like, I'm going to give you the space and respect to do it on your own, but if you can't, you have the tool and support to do it without your own, like what you already, by doing what you were already doing.
Right, right. Wow, there's just so much good stuff, and we could continue this conversation for hours because I could do
Let's
this
schedule
all day.
another one.
I could do this all day with you, but unfortunately, we are at our time. So, give my audience one last like power statement from Chad Ostrowski. What is it that they need to more than anything remember from today's conversation?
One of the things I try to embody in the culture of every school and leader I work with is that we have to have a mindset of better. That's actually where the Teach Better name comes
Mhm.
from.
Mhm.
We can be better today than yesterday and better tomorrow than today. It is only when we stop making progress that we start to stagnate and fail. It's
Mhm.
only when we stop trying to pursue that better version of ourselves, version of our instruction, version of our school or leadership or building that we start to falter and fail. So that is a mindset that if you can embody yourself and give to your staff of, we have to be like sharks. When we stop swimming, we start
Mhm,
dying, right?
mhm,
Like we
mhm.
have to constantly be improving. And that doesn't mean change everything all the time, but constantly looking for ways to make the experience better for the school, for the students, for our stakeholders, and everyone involved in the educational ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely, and one last caveat, not changing everything all the time, but also not changing everything at once.
Correct.
You can do it very slowly because if you
Yeah,
don't, you're gonna have some rebellion on your hands, let me tell you.
100%.
Oh, great. Chad, this has been an amazing conversation. I loved it. You were speaking my language all the way through, definitely. So tell my audience how they can connect with you.
You can find more information about Teach Better at teachbetter.com, or you can follow Teach Better at Teach Better Team on any social media platform. You can also find me at Chad Ostrowski on almost all the platforms, and I look forward to connecting.
Yeah, absolutely. And my audience knows that I will have all of your information in the show notes so they won't have any trouble finding you. Thank you again so much for joining us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
And for the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us as well. And we will see you back here next time. Bye bye.